And one of the things he says is, you can think of this left prefrontal cortex as the 3 L's. It takes logic and language and helps you lie to yourself. How many of us tell us stories about ourselves, give ourselves messages that aren't true? Right? I hit New Year's and I went, Chris, you're not in shape. Because for about 6 months there, I was like, no, I'm good. No, you're not. Does that make sense? So we lie to ourselves. And the reality is we do it a lot. And it's very natural to do. It has to do with that notion of cognitive dissonance. It's much easier for me to think of myself as being fit because I've been an athlete all my life. I don't like to think of myself as having a gut that goes, oh, how long have you been carrying? What that means is we literally are who we tell ourselves we are. You are who you tell yourself you are. Have you seen the YouTube video of the father and the child in front of the mirror in the morning and he says, you are awesome. And she goes, I am awesome. You are strong. I am strong. You are not better than anyone else. I'm not better than anyone else. And no one's better than you. No, it made me cry. I was like, that should be mandatory for every parent. Because we are who we tell ourselves we are. I cannot oversell that to you. That's left prefrontal cortex stuff. And it sticks with us. How many of you were given a negative message as a kid that has stuck with you? Yeah, you know, I'm sorry you didn't have to raise your hand. Oh, that was precious. Yeah, me too. Me too. It's this notion that we really are influenced by the environment. Since you disclosed, I'll join you. My father is incredibly narcissistic. Some of the messages he gave me as a kid were born out of his narcissism. And so they were more about him wanting to look good than me wanting to feel good, right, and be healthy. So the messages that he gave me as a kid, they've stuck with me. I've had to work to overcome them, right? And in times of stress or trauma, guess what happens? I go back to that old neural network, and I have to go, oh, wait a minute. No. So, you know, I just give you a swing thought, right? For 2017, the message I've been giving myself is, give yourself permission to succeed. Now, I used to think, oh, God, Chris, if you go Tony Robbins on yourself, I'm going to poke your eyes out with a fork. It's not Tony Robbins stuff. That's just understanding the neurobiology of trauma, understanding the role of your left prefrontal cortex, and giving yourself a simple message that counteracts the messages that you've heard in the past. Use it. Mine is, I'm giving myself permission to succeed. So I woke up this morning and I said, what do you have to do today to give yourself permission to, I guess I better work out. I worked out. It was awesome. It's only for 7 seconds, but. So think about all of the messages. I usually train on sexual assault, and so this is sexual assault stuff, but you know, how many cases are there of social media, people in power, victim blaming? They give victims this message that I should have known better and it was my fault. Because guess what? Left prefrontal cortex is going to integrate that. It's going to integrate that. So one of the things that's crucial to understand then is that the brain is, it's this meaning-making machine, and it does it without thinking. So you may go, well, what the hell are you talking about? Well, there's meaning on this screen. And the meaning is these are shapes. And you know what those shapes are. What are they? Yeah, we'll deal with you later. There's a smartass in every group. It's like they look like little Pac-Man. The big shapes. What are the big shapes? Yeah, everybody sees them. Triangle, square, star. Technically, it's a rectangle, or whatever. Technically. But you fill in the blanks. You fill in the blanks. Now, that's a visual thing. Do you remember the video from this morning of the two guys in the car? For you young people, it's Netflix Dumb and Dumber. I'm sorry to pick on you, but I would have thought the Rocky Mountains were a lot rockier than this. Yeah, that John Denver's sure full of, and it cut off right there. And yet you all laughed because you filled in the blank. You knew what he was going to say. And it was funny. We do that visually, we do it verbally, and we do it with meaning. So, to be trauma informed is to understand that talking to somebody about my experience of being a victim is stressful, it's threatening, and that impairs the brain's ability to integrate all the data, to talk about the experience. And if you look at me with a blank stare, if you look at me like you're confused, that look was brilliant, right? If you give me that look, for you young people, that's Netflix Fletch. If you give me that look of like, what? Even if you don't mean to, I will fill in the blanks. And the brain's way of filling the blanks is usually to assign negative attribution if you've already connected negative meaning with the experience of being victimized. Because is the experience of being victimized positive? No, it's not. This is the reason why soft eyes is so crucial. You understand the science behind soft eyes. Now I want you to understand the science behind why it's so important. You know now why it works, and now you know why it's so important. The brain is a meaning-making machine. This is a quote from Judith Herman. The core experiences of psychological trauma, yada, yada, yada. I hate reading my slides. And so, what did I say this morning? I threw out this notion that the criminal justice system isn't supposed to be about healing. It's not about healing. Yeah, well, if it can be, shouldn't it be? And this is where I think today's training comes into play. That somebody who has a mental illness and is victimized, double whammy. It's a double whammy. Because if you have a pre-existing condition, we know from the literature that if you have a pre-existing mental illness, your chances of developing post-traumatic stress are higher than those who don't. So this notion of soft eyes, this notion of empowerment, Nebula was talking about the agency, that your agency is about trying to empower people. That's brilliant, because you're a legal agency, and yet you're doing Judith Herman's work. And this is what we want you doing. Today's talk has been all about the science behind this, right? Because what's the fear? The fear is that attorneys, law enforcement officers, and judges are going to say, well, that's just touchy-feely stuff. No, it's science stuff. It's science stuff. Either get on board or don't take the train. In other words, either get on board with this or